Hello all, it's Robbie from Gamers, just doing another Paint in 40K night. Got a few things to talk about tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun and some painting projects to work on. So we're going to start with some deployment tips and tactics that may be beneficial for you in playing your competitive games, as well as a tournament recap. Got a chance to play a tournament at Palladium down in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania on Saturday, as well as got to play Mark. Against Tyranids, he used some leaks from the new Tyranid Codex. That was last night. So lots to talk about tonight and lots to paint. Let's jump in. So what are we painting today? First of all, lots of great stuff. We're gonna do some basing. So it's gonna be a little bit boring as far as painting. It's gonna be lava bases. I find it exciting. My Tau army, I always paint lava bases. So that's what we're doing. I use Mordant Earth, which I will put over this pattern on the base. So deployment, that's what we're here to talk about. Most games, a lot of games are actually won, or at least lost in deployment. A nice thing about 9th edition, what I really like about this edition, is that GW really took out the strategy of figuring out if you should go first or second. It really helps a player out because when you used to be able to decide if you won the roll off to go first or second, you had to make the strategic choice, right? So a lot of players built their lists to go first because they were either counting on winning that roll off or hoping that their opponent would let them go first, which of course never happened because your opponent's typically smart enough to know if you want to go first or not. So now it's out of your hands. You can't even get a 60% chance or whatever it is under those circumstances to go first versus going second or whatever you want. So now basically you roll off, there's no bonus, and if you win the roll off, you have to go first. So it really forces us as competitive players, as it always should have been, even in 8th edition and previous editions, to deploy as if we're going second, yet aggressive enough that we could be productive on turn if we go first. And that's important. It's really important to be able to do both. Now, I'm a Tau player. I'm taking advantage of a lot of the rules around Devilfish, which gets a scout move if I choose Monka turn 1, which is a great advantage because then if I win first turn, I can take over most of the board, which is a really good tactic in these mission packets. However, if I were to go second, I can withdraw more into my deployment zone or move block if I need to with those Devilfish. So it gives me a lot of options, but not all armies can do that. So when you are deploying, you want to have an idea of what your army is going to look like right from the beginning. Some players will tell you to try to coax your opponent into placing down their best units first so you know where they are and you can counter deploy. There is some benefit to that. I'm not going to tell you not to do that, but don't play so many mind games that you yourself wind up messing up your own deployment. This happened to me last night in my game against Mark, against Tyranids. I have no idea what the new Tyranid Codex does, and so I kind of figured I would try to bait him to see where he puts his stuff, even though it's pretty obvious where he's going to put his stuff. I kind of played it coy, but I put so much energy behind trying to get him to show his hand that I didn't pay as much attention to what I did with mine. And so it's really a good reminder that in the end, know what your best deployment is. Have 1, 2, maybe 3 different deployment styles depending on the style you want to play in that game, whether you're super aggressive, super defensive, or somewhere in between. Think about your secondaries and then just deploy. Don't play any games. Put down units that make sense, because the last thing you want to do is deploy a unit and then you can't fit the other unit you were hoping to fit there as well, because that could cost you the game. Now, in 9th edition, with terrain rules, you should be able to avoid being alpha struck. In fact, I found in most games going second is better because you can then position yourself to kill other units. You have a real advantage going second because your opponent goes closer to you, even though the deployment zones technically are closer in most of the missions than they were last mission set or last edition. Going first, you're really mostly going to play cagey. Alpha striking isn't as big of a thing with all the obscuring terrain and good deployment shenanigans you can do. So hide your stuff turn one, but be in position so you can at least score something. It's okay to wait to score your points to the end of the game. Don't feel you have to rush to score turn one. So if it makes more sense to go off for a slow start and bait your opponent to go first, to actually make the first move, you can win, because 40k is really a lot like chess. In that, in the really close matchups, you will be trading pieces. So you don't want to be the first one to give up a piece to start that trade. So be patient in what you do, and then be okay with it. Now that kind of turns into your turn one strategy. We're talking about deployment tricks, but it goes along with your turn one strategy, right? So if you're going first, you don't want to expose much or do much except get your points. So if you have Stranglehold, you just go out, you grab the 3 objectives. You already will have more than your opponent, most likely, because they probably haven't gotten to 3 yet. And there you go, 3 points. Easy peasy. If you could wait, maybe if you have a psychic action you can do that right away, or you can wait. You can wait to do that another turn. It's really better to hold off and make your units count. Other deployment tips to think about is when you're facing armies that infiltrate or can do a scout move. Know right away. It's very important for you. Oh no, his head fell off. It's very important for you to ask your opponent before the game if he has any units that can scout move, right? Those are units that can redeploy, essentially, or, well, ask if they can redeploy as well, because that's something different. But redeploy or scout move, and that'll be the start of the first battle round. It's good to know that, because they could surprise you by moving some units, or if they can redeploy or put things back into reserve, that could surprise you as well. Another thing to ask is for infiltrators. They can deploy right from the start in no man's land. Typically 9 inches, sometimes 12 inches. I'm doing a terrible job of painting under the camera. I'm sorry. I changed my setup, and now I'm afraid of the camera over here. So here we go. So if they can set up in no man's land, that may be a benefit for you turn one, but if you're counting on your infiltrators or your scout moves to help you set up turn one, they could essentially move block you, because what they'll do is they'll put their infiltrators, let's say at the midway point, 12 inches from your deployment zone, and your scout move might let you move 6, 7 inches, but you have to stay 9 inches away from an opponent's model, so you might get 3 inches, and that really changes your strategy and how you want to play the game. So be very aware of anything your opponent can do in deployment, as well as in the start of the first battle round, that will interfere with your strategy. Other deployment tips, you of course have to declare before you start deploying which units are in transports and which will be in deep strike or reserves. Really goes back to what I was saying before, is you need to know your plan before the game starts. This is not a game in 5 turns that you can figure out as you go. And if you're facing an opponent like I did yesterday, as well as on Saturday, I played Harlequins for the first time in a long time, and first time with this kind of list. And then Tyranids with their new codex, which isn't out yet, but my friend found some leaks that looked to be pretty reliable, so he was able to put together a really good list and show me what it can do. So when you don't know what you're facing, you got to pick a plan and stick to it, even if it's wrong. And that starts from deployment to what you're going to do in the first turns and to end the game in order to win the mission. We talked a little bit about the mission in the last stream, so I'm not going to talk too much to that, but that's something to keep in mind. That's really all I want to talk about. Deployment. Deployment is important, but take advantage of your light of sight blocking. Make sure you're not touching the terrain so that you can hide behind it and be able to do something turn one that scores you points. But don't be super aggressive. You don't have to score all your points turn one. So that's it for deployment. Let's focus on tournament recap. So Saturday, I had a chance to drive down to Phoenixville to Palladium Games. If any of you have been there for a tournament, they run a great tournament there. Great players. Basement War Gamers is the group that it's associated with, and they have a lot of great competitive players in that group. And even then, they're really a lot of fun. And if you're not that competitive, there's still some players there that are a little bit newer, starting to figure it out, and they'll adjust to how you play so that it's a good game. Everyone wants a good game. So that was fun. Drove down there. It's about an hour and 20-minute drive. And I brought my Tau, right? So 5 Devilfish, 3 squads of Breachers, 2 squads of Strike Teams, and 2 squads of Pathfinders, which you see me basing now. Maybe one day I'll actually put it under the camera. And we were able to... Oh, what else did I bring? Sorry, I had a Riptide as well. I adjusted my list. Those of you that looked at my list earlier, I did not have a Riptide. I actually had more Fire Warriors, more Devilfish. I dropped some stuff to fit the Riptide because I found that the Riptide could keep my commander alive. I was losing the commander turn 1, or whatever turn I drop them out. So basically, I'd get 1 turn of shooting with them, or with a commander, and maybe a charge if I was lucky, and then he would be dead. Which is not good. That's not very points efficient. I don't want to trade a commander, especially with his reroll 1 buff, and lose him. So getting a Riptide mostly ensured he would live at least a second turn of shooting, because it's very difficult to kill a Riptide. More to talk about that in a little bit. And I also added drones to my Pathfinders team. That was something that was really difficult for me. I do not believe in upgrading your units to the max, unless there's one key unit you really want to do something with. And Pathfinders are not my unit to max out on. They're rail rifles, they're marker light support, and then they die. That's their job. But just like my commander, I found that they would die. They would get removed from the field right away. They'd shoot, then they'd die. 5-up save does not go very far, and so that was a big handicap. So I did some thinking, some mathing, and I thought about if I added a recon drone, just T4. The toughness doesn't matter for drones because it doesn't count on the unit, but 3 wounds, 4-up save. So that's pretty good compared to 1 wound, 5-up save. And then 2 gun drones, 1 wound each also. And I would consider, actually, be honest with you, shield drones, but I did not want to spend the points on that. That was a bridge too far, as some would say. So that's what I did. I expanded those units. They were 110 points, and I think that made it like 140 points or something crazy like that, which makes them a little expensive. A little expensive. They're pretty expensive. But I found that I could get a second turn out of them, because putting those wounds on the drones now have a 4-up save instead of a 5-up when I want to, and absorb some of those wounds would keep the unit alive that second turn. If they had high AP, I'd put it on a Pathfinder, because I don't mind losing marker lights. They have too many marker lights. The unit would be much more efficient if there's only 5 Pathfinders, but it's not. As you know, it is 10. You have to take 10. So I take them on Pathfinders, I kill them. If there's no AP or 1 AP, I'll pop it on the gun drone if it's multiple damage, or on the recon drone if it is 1 damage, and just tank those shots. And that usually absorbs enough to at least leave the 3 rail rifles alive. So that typically worked out pretty well for me. What other adjustments did I make to my list? I think that was the main thing. However, adding the Riptide also allowed me to do To the Last as my secondary, which is a really good secondary choice if you have 3 tough to kill units. So my commander, the Riptide, and the broadsides were my To the Last. And I think that you typically, if I lose those, I'm losing the game. So that worked out really well. So talking about my tournament, I think the first game was against Tau, so mirror match. That was a very fun game. My opponent's playing board can with 2 Riptides, one with the heavy burst cannon, one with the ion accelerator. And battle suits. He had a lot of air bursting fragmentation projectors, which I think is a decent build, but it didn't work well against my list. And he had a couple stealth teams. I was able to match nicely with him only because being able to stay in Devilfish just kind of let me dictate the game. I charged units with my Devilfish. I was just basically annoying. He did have 2 broadsides, but he just couldn't kill enough, and I got ahead of him in scoring. So that was a really fun game. I won that game, but it would have been close if we were able to finish the game. We only got to, I think, turn 2 or turn 3. He's a little bit newer to playing competitively, so we were also talking a little bit strategy and trying to help him out and things like that. But it was a really fun game. I do believe if we got to play 5 turns, which you've heard me talk about a million times, I encourage you to do your best to be able to play faster so you can play full turns. He might have had a chance to pull it off, to be fair, because he still has 2 Riptides at the end. I was just able to basically avoid them, but I was clearing out everything else. So it would have been an interesting game had it gone to 5 turns. My second game was against Necrons, which is a lot of fun. So I didn't score enough points in that first game because, like I said, we only got to like turn 2 or turn 3. So I wound up being the lowest scoring first win, which wound up pairing me against someone who had lost but scored a lot. So that was helpful for me. That made my schedule a little bit easier, hypothetically. So I want to compare it against Necrons. Necrons are not doing very well right now, but they are getting wins. They are getting some wins. So it was a Silent King, Wraiths, Destroyers, and the big close combat robots, the ones with the dual wielding swords. I don't even know the names of them. And some infantry. It was a really fun list. I really liked it. Wraiths, I know I don't match up well against typically. 4-up invuln, T5. Not really something I like to fight. So what I wound up doing in that game is I actually I fed the Wraiths a Devilfish every turn. So I have 5 Devilfish. So what I was doing was essentially charging with the Devilfish from one end. It would take him 2 close combats to kill it. So the turn I charge him, then his turn, he would then kill it. I would have a unit just outside of an inch on the opposite side of the Wraith. So when he had to pile in, he had to go the other direction or stay still. And then I just kept trading. I just kept trading a Devilfish a turn to keep his Wraiths busy. Meanwhile, I played the mission. I was able to mostly table him, essentially, except for the Silent King and the Wraith, which is pretty funny. But won the mission, but almost tabled him. But his 2 of his most powerful units were on the table the entire time. The Tomb King was tough. That's not a good matchup for me. I kind of ignored that too, because I knew I didn't match up. My list is not built for anti-big vehicle, anti-tanks, and essentially a knight. He's kind of like a knight. So my choice to kill everything else, play the mission, worked really well. That's what my list does, and it does it well, but it does have hard matchups that it struggles in, which we'll get to in a second. So that was my game 2. I was very happy with that game because I won because of the decisions I made. If that makes sense. I played a similar matchup with my other friend Mark against Necrons a few days earlier, which actually is what helped me with that matchup. And I knew what to do because of it. Like, I already had a plan. And that is what makes you a good tournament player. You know, it is. It's practice, practice, practice. You get better by knowing the other armies you play against. If you don't know what you're playing against, it's hard for you to win. It really is. I can't emphasize that enough. To be competitive, to actually really want to win, not to play competitive. Playing competitive is a little bit different than like winning, for example, a GT or even an RTT. The nice thing about those small Tournaments like at Palladium. I mean, I don't remember when they had. I think they had like 16 people. It felt like a lot of people. I think it was 7 tables. Uh there might have been 13 or 15 people there playing. So in small tournaments like that, you can get lucky. You know what I mean? You could play good matchups that you do well in. And you could get bad matchups where you don't do well in. But if you play a 5, 6, 8 game GT, forget it. You're gonna play the big dogs, right? You're gonna run into lists that are both skewed as well as typical of what you would expect. Skewed lists are sometimes called gatekeeper lists. Those are lists that players play um, that are basically good against the meta, but they struggle against other armies, which I do enjoy playing. You've probably noticed that I for most of my 40K career, I mean I don't get paid, but my 40K hobby life, I've always played armies that were not top tier. In fact, this may be the first time I'm playing an army that's top tier, and it's already not top tier if you think about what Eldar with really Harlequins and the upcoming Tyranids, I think, will be tough. So I'm enjoying it while I can, but my list is not even the top Tau list. It's a more, I find a more fun list to play. It is a good list, but it is skewed because I like to be the player that comes in and surprises people. You know, something you don't quite expect. And 5 Devilfish, which used to be 7, is pretty surprising for a lot of players. So what was I getting at? Okay, so I want to give. So my third game was against Harlequins. For those of you that don't know, Harlequins kind of good. They're kind of good right now. And the player who I played was really good player. I don't know him that well, but you know when you play a good player or not. And he was really good, experienced, competitively, etc. And I was glad to play him. I'm like, this makes sense. So because of the points I scored, it was not the top table, but I think there are only 2 tables that had undefeated players. So it was our table. We were basically the third and fourth, and first and second were on another table. So I'm like, okay, all right. So this will be interesting. We'll see how this goes. So this is the first game I also did not go first. My army typically is okay going second, except in this case, I made some blunders early on. For one, not an excuse. I don't play that much anymore, so I was already tired, and I haven't played a tournament in a while. So in my head, I'm like gassed. I'm just like, all right, third game, let's do this. Had a game plan. Did I stick to it? If you're listening live, say in the chat now, or even if you're not, put in the chat, comment on this. Do you think that I stuck to my plan that I had as I was deploying my army? I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And you are right. I did not. Oops. So going second, I think that's what threw me off. I had a plan of what I was going to do if I got first. I had a plan of what I was going to do if I went second, but I was more like, I hope I get first. And I should not have gotten in that mind state. That's not the right mind state. What you really want to do is be ready for both. So he got first turn. I did my scout moves, basically castled up, which I don't think that was 100%. It was, I would needed to castle up no matter what. That wasn't the wrong move. But I castled up actually too much. I should have. It was we were basically table quarters with a circle in the middle, so we were diagonal from each other, and I basically castled up in my one corner. I should have sent 2 devilfish to the other half of the skinny side, but I was seriously afraid of him destroying them right away. I don't know what I was afraid of because I didn't know what to expect. So that was wrong. That was the wrong play. And I continued to double down on the wrong play after that. And if I played that same list, even the same player again, that game would be totally different. That does not mean I would have won, but it would have been more competitive because not knowing how that army played, I was shooting in the dark. And not only was I shooting in the dark, I wasn't even trusting myself. And that's a problem. So as I play more tournaments, if I'm going to go to the Atlantic City Open, which is in June, I believe, already got my tickets, very excited for it. I need to be better than that. I need to be on top of it. I need to be sharp. So that was that. I got I got my butt kicked, just to be honest. I scored points. I mean, I scored some points. But I was basically blocked into my own deployment zone and couldn't break out. And if I had had 2 fire bases instead of 1, I could have done more. And that is what wound up really being the reason I struggled, or at least one of the main reasons I struggled. So that's life. That's the game. The more you play it, the better you can be. But it was a great time. If you ever get a chance, they do monthly tournaments at Palladium. I highly recommend grabbing a game down there. I love playing there. That was my 3rd tournament there, I believe, or maybe 2nd. We need to get more tournaments going in Lehigh Valley. I'm putting together actually a league. We are for gamers. We're going to put together a league starting soon, so keep an eye out for more information on that. The nice thing about that is it'll basically be a tournament, but you can play in your own time. So like you get a month or 2, you get 2 months to play 5 games, and the winner of that wins. So we'll pod people up, I think, if we get enough players. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of players. We'll try to do live events too. I'm still keeping an eye on that, figuring out how we're going to do that. I think some people are still cautious about COVID, but really right now, if anything, seems like the best time to be running events. So maybe I'll try to do one in May or maybe in June. Actually, probably June, if that makes sense. So hopefully all of you can come out and join us. We got to find a location and get some 2,000 points going, see who can win. Let's do it. So that was my recap. Now I want to talk about Tyranids. I'm not going to complain about Harlequins, by the way. Every army has a kind of like, this happens as part of every edition. I do not know if Harlequins are as broken as they seem, because they said this about Tau not that long ago, and now they're not talking about Tau. That's kind of how the meta seems to work, so we'll see. But Mark happened to find a online version of the Codex that looks pretty legit for Tyranids, so he put together a list, played with the new rules. Me, of course, not having any idea how it plays, said, sure, why not? Let's see where it goes. I think you know where this is going. So I did go first. I deployed pretty aggressively because I knew I could withdraw. I was right up at the line. And my first turn was pretty decent. I was a little aggressive, and I knew that. I knew that turn 2 when it's too late. I had a feeling, but I went for it anyway. I got a little too aggressive, and Tyranids appear to play really well castled up, as a lot of armies do. And I honestly should not have even sniffed at that. I could have gone Stranglehold really easily. Well, I did. So there's no reason for me to play aggressively. Especially playing to the last as one of my key objectives. I really do need to play more conservatively. So maybe after all these games, I'll have learned my lesson. Here I am painting off camera. I will get better, I promise. So, and that's why we need you here live. When you're here live, you can yell at me in the chat and be like, Robbie, come on, man. I can't see you painting your bases. That's not good. Let's see. Got a few more bases to paint. Then I gotta find something else because I apparently didn't grab enough to paint today. So, yeah, this guy's still drying. So, Tyranids. I left my Riptide out in the open because I got a little cocky. I've played 3 games now with the Riptide list. So that would be my 4th game. Having never lost my Riptide except for at the end of the game. Matt, aggressively is more fun, though. It is more fun, and that is my default, as I think it is for many of us. But unfortunately, it's not the best way to play. And that's where 40k getting so killy in these editions, especially 9th, should be a good reminder. Actually everything can be killed pretty easily. So when you kill something, you need to expect whatever you use to kill them to die in return. So I got cocky. My Riptide was not going to die. I told Mark this. I said, I haven't lost my Riptide. I'm not going to lose my Riptide. And I'm going to show you. And of course, he's shown me. He flew up a Hive Tyrant, I think, and he was paired with something else. I wish I remembered what it was. And wouldn't you know it, that thing apparently spills out mortal wounds like you wouldn't believe. So me not knowing anything about Tyranids, I don't know the names, so bear with me, but basically every time they successfully casted a power, it dealt, I think, D3 mortal wounds to the closest unit. So this psychic model's closest unit was my Riptide. And I'm sure this doesn't surprise you. He rolled a 3 all 3 times. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, Robbie, why didn't you have Feel No Pain on your Riptide? Because you went first. And that's what I'm going to tell you. I did. And I failed every Feel No Pain. So I lost 9 wounds to that alone. 9. And one of them was Smite. So I think it was like 2 more wounds on top. I think I saved 1. 1 of the 11 by then. And he just finished it off in shooting, which was not difficult at that point at all. So that was a bummer, but I wasn't in a bad spot outside of I could have played it better. I moved my broadsides up, which was really part of the issue. And so that gave him holes to move some of his units around to finish RDP or R&D. Sorry, R&D it is. As well as just slowly picking me away and getting into charges that I just had no business allowing. Having 5 Devilfish, there's no excuse for his army to have gotten into my ranks turn 2. I'm just telling the truth. I just played it too aggressively, and I gave him too many holes. So that game a second time, I think I could win. Doesn't mean I would win, but I think I could win. I really do, because I wouldn't be an idiot, especially when I'd stranglehold so easily. So Matt, your default is aggressive. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's all of ours. But the good players, what separates the good players from the amateur, I believe, is the ability to not not play aggressively. It's a 5-turn game. You don't need to shoot everything the first turn, even if you want to. But I think we're gonna paint a drone next. That's basically it. So that's all that's going on today. Not a lot. It's been half an hour. I might let you go. I don't know. I don't know if Matt's still on. Small group today. No big deal. I enjoy hanging out with you guys. I'll try to do this more often. Just a quick plug before I let you go. We're gamers, of course, gamers of the Eastern Fringe. Please check us out. Please consider subscribing. We're going to have more and more of these videos. And we have paint nights on Wednesdays, believe it or not. And just launched our podcast. We are growing very fast. Really excited. We're going to start running more events in the neighborhood. So keep an eye out for it. Well, thanks for painting. Have fun playing. Have a great night.